All right, hi, and welcome to Skills 4 and 5, Day 1, 2 ways to think about division. So we're going to talk about first just division in general and to get our understanding of the two different ways that we can look at division and think about it so that we have those solidly in mind as we start to investigate what it means to divide whole numbers by unit fractions and unit fractions by whole numbers. And so the very first thing I want you to do on this page, 2 ways to think about division, is I want you to think if you can, I want to see if you can think of 2 different ways to show 15 divided by 3. And I'm talking about like using circles, squares, kind of grouping things. Can you show this 15 divided by 3 2 different ways? And we're going to talk about that. So pause, try and show it twice, 2 different ways, and then I'll talk about the 2 ways that I was thinking about. All right, so I was thinking of this as you could do this in one of 2 ways. First, there's an idea of sharing. So I take my 15 things. I'm going to do that in a minute. I start with my 15, and then I'm going to share those equally in 3 groups. And what does that look like? Well, I'm going to have 5 of each, or I should say 5 in each circle. Okay, so that's one way that we can think about this. We take this whole, we're going to divide it and share it amongst 3 different things. Now there's one other way that we can think about it, and maybe you came up with this and maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't come up with this one, but you came up with the other one. And it's the idea of grouping. Okay, the idea of grouping. Okay, so this one, what I'm going to do is I want groups of 3, because this is still 15 divided by 3. So I want to know how many groups of 3 do I have? And the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 groups of 3 in this problem, 15 divided by 3. Okay, so again, we have a grouping when we take this whole and we start to put it into the groups of my dividend, okay, or my divisor, sorry. And we have this idea of sharing. So I have this group and I'm going to split it up into these 3 different groups, okay? So at this point, I want you to turn the page, and you should be on a page that looks something like this. And we're going to talk about each number and what it means. So when we have this sharing context, what does that mean? And when we have a grouping context, what do the numbers mean? All right, so when we're in a sharing mode, when we have a sharing problem, when we look at the 15, that means that, how many we start with. And we look over at the 3, and that's going to tell us how many groups we split them into. Okay, it's like the 3 people. I'm going to share it with 3 other people. I'm going to put them on 3 different shelves. I have this group of things that I need to share. Okay, and then lastly, the 5, it tells you how many each group gets. Okay, how many each group gets. And again, this is where we start getting a little confusing because we're using that word group, and then we're like, well, is that grouping or sharing? So at the end of the day, sharing is when I have this thing, I have this total, and I need to share it amongst different groups. Okay, I'm not gonna do it that way. All right, what about when we do grouping? Okay, what does each number mean? Same. So the 15 is the same. I'm still starting with a certain number. The 5 is the answer, and it tells us how many groups we're able to make. And the 3 this time is how many I'm going to put into each group. Okay, so it might be like I start with 15 things, and then I need to do Groups of 3, how many possible groups can I have? So if we had like the idea of, here, hold on a second. We're actually going to look at 2 problems and thinking about, are they a grouping problem or are they a sharing problem? And how to tell, and then you'll do some practice with this. So just hold on a second. Oops, let me move my, no, there we go. Sorry about that. So let's look at these similar situations, similar problems, and try and think about which one is a grouping problem and which one is a sharing problem. Again, understanding the difference between grouping and sharing is going to help you to understand when we get into dividing by the unit fractions or taking unit fractions and dividing, what you're going to do with that information, okay? How you're going to solve that process. So this first one says, Jeff made 12 cookies and divided them equally among his 4 cousins. How many cookies did each cousin get? And then look at the other one. Jeff made 12 cookies and packed them into sacks of 4. How many sacks of cookies was he able to make? So both of these are 12 divided by 4. Both of these are 12 divided by 4. Let's take a look at it. Oh, come on.